All right, good afternoon. I'm going to jump right into the training. Hopefully, other people will join. But we do know this is being recorded, and it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood and a very busy time in real estate. So, not a lot of agents can usually cut out time in the middle of the day, and that's okay. That's why we record these. So you can watch them later. My name is Jenny McAtee. I'm the broker for the Maryland office of the Titan 4 here in Frederick, Maryland. We are known as Iron Valley Crossroads. Please, if you're ever in the neighborhood, come and visit. There's a space for you here. So we would love to see you in the office. In the interim, I've done two other trainings, and I'm going to start by just jumping in with sharing my screen on the brokerage agreements. The whole idea here is that we are going over all the Maryland broker agreements. The idea is that if you follow along, which we do hope you will do, you will be able to get paid because that's important. I know for all of us, that's what we're in the business for, is to get paid. But number two, and probably even more important, is to stay legal, not only for our sake, but for our clients' sakes as well. And that's the whole point. This is a four-part training. This is the fourth part. There's a lot to cover today, so I am going to jump right in. There aren't a lot of people here. If you do come in the middle of this and you have questions, please save them to the end. We want to stay on task. I also will say I cannot cover every single document. Those of you who are new to the Maryland experience know that we have upwards of 45 pages to a contract. And a lot of those do start with the listing agreement and being the listing agent. We're not going to be able to cover all those today. So what I'm doing is covering the ones that are required that you need to know about to stay fully in compliance. We have quite a few documents that are, quote, if necessary, end quote, documents, meaning it's really based on the transaction itself. Some of those I will touch upon, some of those I won't. However, just to be clear, a new checklist is coming. And our admin is fantastic. She's available to help. I'm available to help. And so if you do have further questions that aren't answered in this training, by all means, reach out. We're happy to set you straight. So let's jump in and see what we have here. It's always helpful to start with contracts and what they are. So there are 6 elements to a contract. You need to make sure that all parties are legally competent. That is really important on the listing side. We have to make sure that the person or persons that are being named in that contract are actually eligible to sell the property and to transfer the rightful ownership. May not even be a sale. That's another training for another day. That the object that is being transferred is legal. And this is an issue with mobile homes, aka modular homes, manufactured homes. Some of those are actually not real property, they're personal property. Again, a training for another day. Your job as a listing agent is to know the difference. The consideration is, of course, the amount that the buyer thinks that the property is worth for that transfer. That is the consideration, not the EMD. We have an offeror, note the OR, they're the ones making the offer, and an offeree, the one accepting that offer eventually. That could switch from buyer to seller. So we don't want to say buyer, seller here. It's offeror or offeree. And then statute of frauds. We know in Maryland, everything must be in writing with regards to real estate. So nothing verbal. If you are having a verbal conversation with another agent, please know until it's in writing on a form, it doesn't matter. I don't care how professional the two agents are, until it is in writing and all parties have signed, no promises matter. Okay, it's all what is in writing and with a signature. Now, there are several places that you can find these documents, which is also adding to the confusion for Maryland. I understand we are a very weird state in this regard. Number one is through Maryland Realtors. That You have to be a member of Maryland Realtor and or your broker does to get those documents. The commission itself has some of those required. We're going to go over that today for sure. We have a bright disclosure. And then, of course, we offer some of them as your broker. But if you're out there in the wild, these are the three main places that you're going to look for documents that you need. The state mandated ones are coming from MREC. We've already covered these in other trainings. I'm not going to go over these today, other than to say that understanding whom and consent for dual are disclosure forms. Maryland law is very clear. You must give these upon first face-to-face contact with a potential client. Now, I know some people say, well, if I get the listing agreement signed or the buyer's agreement signed, then I don't need to get the understanding whom because they've hired me. Wrong. I disagree with that. Now, this is a matter of opinion, but as the broker of this office, my opinion is that this is a disclosure form. It is full of information, including how to reach the commission. So why would we not want them to have that information? And by the way, they were not your client until they signed that listing agreement or that buyer broker agreement, and therefore they should be given the opportunity to understand agency before they sign that agreement. This verifies that you got that okay, both for the dual agency as well as understanding. And I have to tell you, in my own sales practice today, I had a client reach out and say, I'm interested in looking at this house. Would we be walking into a dual agency? I see it's listed by Iron Valley Real Estate. And it turns out it's a different Iron Valley Real Estate. So no, we are not in a dual agency situation here in the state. But I have trained my buyers so well that they even know what to look for. Why? Because it started with that consent for dual when I first met them and first sat down. So if you think I don't live and breathe this stuff, I do, and even in my own practice. It's this last form listed, this Maryland Residential Property Disclosed Disclaimer Statement, that gets a lot of people in trouble on the listing side. So just know this is, you're going to find it on MREC, Maryland Real Estate Commission website, right at the bottom. I'm going to show that to you, and we're going to spend some time here on this today. Again, our third part of the training was all on the listing agreement. I'm not touching that today. We're touching all the documents that go with the listing agreement so that you know. If you have any questions on the listing agreement itself, please go back and watch that training. We're going to spend the rest of this training on the additional documents that we didn't get to in part 3, but more importantly, that support the listing agreement and that we need in order to get our contracts through full compliance and get paid at the time of settlement. With that being said, let's jump into this MREC, short for Maryland Real Estate Commission, the MREC website. This is straight up the homepage of it. And if you scroll to the very bottom, you will see that there is this form called Maryland Residential Property Disclosed Disclaim. Okay, it's the disclosure disclaim statement. You will, if you're talking to me and I'm speaking fast, I call it the D&D. That's my shorthand for disclose or disclaim. So when you're looking for it and you need it, this is where you find it. I get that question a lot, especially from younger agents, and that's understandable. I want to go ahead and pull that up and take a look at it. Please do not be short with this document. This is critical. And I see a lot of agents just kind of haphazardly not taking it too seriously, okay? We really need you to take it seriously because it's so important. And the very first thing you're going to realize is that this is "and" up here in the title, meaning it's two different disclosures, essentially. It's two different forms. We just put it all on one. Why? Because your seller has to determine if they are going to share all that they know about their property with the buyer or not. They're going to disclaim. So of course, you would not sign in both places as the seller. You would choose, you're either disclosing information, giving information, or you are not. Page 1, and we're not going to go over this. I could spend 3 hours just on this document, so we're not going to do that. Very high level, you are only exempt if nobody has resided in that property for the past year. And by nobody, I mean the name on the contract, the seller. So for instance, if it is an investment property, they may be exempt. Okay. If it's a new build, then nobody has lived in it in a year, they are exempt. And there are some others. If you are a personal representative of a decedent, no, but you haven't lived there, you don't know anything about the property, so you're exempt. 99.9% of the time, you're not going to be exempt. So you might as well. And it can't hurt to have a seller fill out this document anyway, quite honestly. There's very little here. If they want to disclaim, then they could do that. Okay, so read page 1. It's really important that you familiarize yourself with who is exempt. It's not many. Okay? There are several notices in here. And all of this is to say to the buyer and to the seller, hey, if you have a latent defect, and it is mentioned 17 times in this document, you must disclose that to the buyer. What is a latent defect? Let's go right back to pre-licensing, where we learned that a latent defect is one that the buyer could not ascertain. They could not see it with their own eyes and determine what was going on. But you, having lived there and owning that property, know. For instance, we get a lot of standing water after a hard rain, or water that trickles into the basement after a hard rain. Or you knew that you had carpenter bees and the like, right? So what do you know? If those are latent, you must disclose that information. You can't hide it. You have to disclose it. Of course, that ends up in quite a few lawsuits. That's what we're trying to avoid. This very first page is still your job to fill out. And when I say your job, it's your seller's job. You've got to make sure that the seller is filling this out. How long have they owned the property? What's the water, sewer? Is there a garbage disposal, dishwasher? How is the home heated? How is it air conditioned? And how is the water heated? Now, by disclosing this information, that does not open your seller up to anything. It's just common courtesy. And by the way, it's okay if they don't know the age. And you as an agent already probably know this information because you have been walking around looking at this listing, and you already know if it's on public or well, if there's a sewer because you're going to ask the question, if there's a garbage disposal because you're going to look or ask the question, etc., etc. So for having the seller say, well, I don't know, you as a licensee should know. Okay. And then we get into this disclosure. And really, if you read through, it is all of the things that make up the workings of the house. You know, structural, mechanical, sound familiar around what? Inspections. So the seller is okay to say, I don't know, unknown. They don't have to be experts about home building or home running or anything. You know, quite a few homeowners really don't understand their home at all. And that's okay. That's what we're there for. They don't need to know what type of roof. If they don't know, just click unknown. It doesn't harm them to say that so long as they are disclosing any latent defects. The plumbing, the heating, the air conditioning, the electric systems. We've had a smoke detector change in this state. In fact, it changed in 2018, and it's going to change again here in 2026 with an update to the disclosure form in 2024. So I'll introduce that to you later. All we care about is that the smoke alarms are in compliance. No more can you wait for a home inspection and hope the home inspection catches it. In fact, the state is expecting every seller to update those smoke detectors regardless. So if there are any questions on that, let me know. Hashtag I'm not an attorney. I'm just telling you what I know from the state. The rest of page 2 and page 3 then are just information from the seller to the buyer. Okay. Note 16A was put in since COVID because we've had so many people do their own work, a lot of DIYers out there now. And so what we want to know is, were permits pulled? If I'm a listing agent and I'm walking around and I see a new addition, or I see a new bathroom or new kitchen, I'm going to ask the question, hey, did you do this work or did you have a contractor? And they're, of course, going to usually say, oh, so proudly, I did it myself. Great. Did you pull the permits? Did you get it permitted? If not, we have our very first problem. Yeah, we've got to make sure that the work is permitted. So 16A was an add-in. Note, as I've said in many trainings, anytime there's a bold statement, it really is for you, the real estate agent, to slow down. That is not bolded for your seller. It is bolded for you as an agent to draw your attention to make sure you have asked the question. Anytime you see bold, that's a little trick for you and our contracts. Now, let's say the seller is happy to fill out pages 1 through 3 to give what information they know. Great, then they have chosen to disclose information, to share information with the buyer, and they would sign page 3. Okay? They fill this out. You do not fill this out. This is the seller filling this out. In fact, one would argue you don't want any part of it, because I will say on page 1, you might be able to help them along and say, well, I know it's natural gas because I see the gas line, right? And what, I'm a real estate agent and I know how homes work, so therefore that one might be okay. Or the hot water, but I would not offer up an age. If they don't know, leave it blank. You're going to know if it's public or well, so you can help them with this. But page 2 and 3 are not for you to touch. You send it, you let them fill it out and sign it, and that's the end of it. And of course, we all know most sellers like to say, I want to sell it as is. I don't want to disclose any information. Okay, well, we give you that option in the second form on this document, which is the disclaimer statement. If you either disclose or disclaim, you can't do both at the same time. They're opposite of each other. So the disclaimer really just repeats, by the way, what is on page 1, including all about latent defects. You can see they even define it within the document, mentioned over and over again. And just in case, we go ahead and put all these lines and say, hey, you, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, do you have any knowledge of any latent defects? This is your last opportunity to fess up. Okay. Now, recently I saw a contract where neither yes nor no was checked. It just said unknown. No, don't do that. It's either yes or no. We don't need your commentary unless you're telling us about a latent defect. And it could be as simple as, after 3 days of hard rain, we have standing water around the foundation. Okay. I'd rather you disclose that than have the buyer come back and say they were hiding a water issue. Okay. This is your seller's opportunity to get it all out and help the buyer, and more importantly, help the transaction. And then, of course, if they're going to choose to disclaim, they would sign page 4. You're either having your seller sign page 3 or page 4, but not both. You're doing one or the other. This is a state mandated form. Not only is it state mandated, it is so important that technically you are not supposed to allow a buyer to write an offer nor accept an offer until the buyer has seen this document. That's how important it is. So one of the first things I look for when I'm looking at a listing on the MLS is, are there disclosures? And if so, where is the D&D form? It's that important. No D&D form, no offer. I'm going to call the listing agent and say, Where's the disclose and disclaimer form? It's missing. Can't write an offer till I see it. Unless, of course, they're exempt, at which point they're going to say, oh, there's no D&D form because this is a sheriff's sale or a tax sale and it's in foreclosure. So therefore, right, we don't have to disclose and disclaim or disclaim. That's the D&D form, super, super important. And you will note it's kind of right up there is the first one that we're going to look for. Now, I want to take you into Bright for a moment. And what I want to show you is the listing forms. There are two things in here I want to bring your attention to. Number one is the seller and buyer disclosure form. Now, this drives me out of my mind because I'm a type A, but this is actually two forms in one. You'll see the red form is for sellers and landlords, and then they have attached the blue form for buyers and tenants. I think they should separate these to make it very clear and easy, but I don't always get my way in life. And so just know you're going to have to delete the one you don't need and give the other. So of course, if you're on a listing, you're going to fill out the red form, the seller landlord disclosure form. Now, what does this form do? It really gives the seller information about, which is really a discussion between you and the seller about when this property is going to go active, when it's ready for marketing, and how the seller wants it on the market. Is this a duplicate for what's in the listing agreement? Why, yes, it is. Why do we need it? Because MLS tells us we must. So therefore, it is a required form, okay? And it opens up a discussion for you and your sellers. Going back to, and I'm finding these, by the way, just under listings and then profile sheets and listing forms. That's where you're going to find both of these. And if you come down, you're going to see that there are profile sheets. And a lot of agents just don't even seem to ever look at these, which I find most fascinating because they're actually great. I absolutely love this 9-page form. Why? Because if you are new and you're not really sure how homes are built and what stucco is versus slab versus shingles versus, whatever, this really kind of helps you go through the house. If you're a younger agent in particular, why not print this out for each house? You could even put it on an iPad and fill it out while you're going along. Okay. It actually talks about all the things that you should be talking to your client about, including acceptable financing choices and all the various disclosures you're going to need. But look, it gets even more exciting. All right, well, I find it exciting, including taxes, tax bill. Do you have to fill out all of it? No. But if you continue down, look what happens. It gets into all the things that we need for MLS inclusions, like the style of the home and what it's made of and the roof, etc. And when you put in a listing into the MLS, it's going to ask you, these are all drop down from the MLS, so why not get it while you're walking around on your listing appointment? Or maybe you go back right after you get the listing agreement signed, and this is the first thing you do. You take a great profile of the property that you are going to put in the MLS. It answers things even like the type of sewer and septic, the type of electric service. Now, if you don't know what all those mean, I would encourage you to go and get educated. Okay, that's not what we're doing here today. But even if you don't, it's a good learning opportunity. You don't have to admit that your client at the moment that you don't know what a PERC approved septic is. If you don't know what a PERC approved septic is, okay, they're just going to tell you that they're on septic. Okay, fine. If you can find out more specifics, great. If you can't, okay. No one's going to hold it too far against you, okay? But it is a great learning tool, as well as it gives you all of the things that you are going to need for the listing. It's a fillable PDF. And like I said, for me, including features, note if you were in any of the office trainings, you know that we're going to see a difference with not appraisal on appraisals with regards to appliances. And so this is going to become very, very important here in a few months. Anyway, on and on, several pages worth of wonderful information where you can fill it out as a PDF or just print it out and write it if you wish, including showing details and how who wants to be contacted and where the lockbox is going to go. So if you fill this out well, the truth is it saves you a lot of back and forth questions with your seller, and it encourages quite a few conversations and questions that you're going to want to ask. If you need more information on this document or want to know more about how I present it, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to share with you. And again, this is not a requirement. However, it is on the MLS and will save you quite a bit of time if you use the residential sale profile sheet from Bright. Okay? So I wanted to share that with you. I definitely want to get back into some of the other required documents. And one of the ones that you're going to need, and let's see if I can pull it up here, is missing, of course. All right, that's the commission. I can close that out now, and I'll close that out now. You know how it is. You have like 500 tabs, and you'll lose all of your forms. We want to go into the brokerage forms. This is where you're going to find on Maryland Realtors. If you're on dotloop, it will be in your dotloop templates. If you're on any other kind of e-sign, you can find it usually in your document directories. And that is this lockbox addendum. This is one of those that is absolutely required, and yet it is not to be included in your disclosures. Why? Well, this is a conversation between you and your seller. This is the seller's opportunity to learn about the Sentry lockbox, to figure out where that box will go and what the seller would like to see. You know, sellers sometimes don't want them on the front door, or maybe they don't fit on the front door. So where are we going to put it? And also, how long is it going to stay there? That's one of the things that I get a lot of complaints sometimes about. Note at the bottom of the lockbox addendum, there's an opportunity, should this property be occupied by a tenant, for the tenant to sign this document so that the tenant is aware that there will be access given to the property while they are residing there. Now, we're not getting them to agree to anything other than acknowledging that there will be a lockbox on the property, and inside said lockbox will be a key to the property. This is again how you know as a listing agent your seller has had that conversation with the tenant, and the tenant is aware that the house is going up for sale without getting involved. This is what I love about this particular document. All right. Another document that we want you to get here in the Maryland office is the financial condition of property disclosure. Again, this is only for the brokerage. This will never go outside of the brokerage, will not be put in disclosures for the buyer or into the MLS. Why? Because me as your broker here in Maryland, what I want to know is, what is the financial condition of this property? This is the seller's opportunity to say, hey, I have a mortgage. I have a second mortgage. I have a home equity line of credit. I'm about to go into foreclosure. I need to sell my house because I'm really underwater, right? This allows us inside the brokerage to help them sell their house more quickly and to answer any questions should they come up towards settlement. I'm going to go looking for this document if I get a call from a title company or a lender, or if there's a question about a net sale. Oh, the agent said I would net so much money. Well, you're not going to net 100,000 if you owe 100,000. So that couldn't have been true, right? I get to use this document a multitude of ways. Again, you're going to see it on the checklist where it will say for brokerage only, meaning it must be filled out. It's a required document, but only for us inside the house. Moving on from the financial condition, the other one that we need to talk about is this listing broker's offer of cooperative compensation. Listing broker's offer of cooperative compensation. Now, I do like that this says this shall not be uploaded into the multiple listing service. This is not a disclosure for the public. This stays just inside the house. But what it does is it gives me and anybody doing the looking an option to see that you have had the conversation of cooperative compensation. That's a conversation, a negotiation when you are getting the listing agreement filled out. This immediately follows the conversation. You've put it in the listing agreement. Ideally, you've had that conversation already. Now we're just documenting what you agreed to in that conversation. You sit down with the seller, they bring you in for a listing appointment, you get that listing agreement signed. Now we're going to get another document to verify what you told me when we sat for the listing agreement. And this is ready to go then, should, may not happen, that a buyer request buyer broker compensation. You know, it's not a guarantee and we don't have to do it and your seller doesn't have to do it. So even if it's zero, we're going to, or 0% or $0, we are going to look for this upon closing before we can get you out the door and get you paid. So this becomes a very important document, but it stays in the brokerage until an offer is made requesting buyer broker. And so there's several conversations around this. One with your seller, and then again with the buying agent, should they request it. Okay, so they might say, hey, is the seller willing to pay anything towards buyer broker? And you will already have the answer right here. You don't have to go guess. You don't have to go talk to the seller. You've already done that. And you will have already gotten this signed, and then it can go to the buyer broker for signature. So that's another in-house only until it's needed. So this one will eventually potentially go out into to the buyer side, unlike the other two, the financial condition and the lockbox. However, only once it's asked. Okay? Once it's asked. There are a few other things that we need to cover, and one of them is the one-page document. I think I just saw closed bright, but let me see if I still have access. When you do a sale search and, you know, let's just look up any particular property that's active. And I'm just randomly picking one, just so you know, we'll just go here. Whatever this property is, we're going to look for the one-page document about the listing. Okay, so once you have it in Brighton and it's active, we need a one-page. How do you do that? You hit print, and you're going to look for agent one-page. Note there's all kinds of things that you can print, but we are only looking for the agent one-page, and then you're going to print as a PDF and add it to your loop if you're in Loop, and or to SkySlope when you update your documents there to SkySlope. Why? Well, it used to be in the day we did this because it would tell us about compensation, and of course we don't do that anymore. But it's also to make sure that we're all talking about the same property. You know, earlier this year, there was an agent who tried selling the wrong property, and nothing was matching. And it turns out, as you can see, this is a great example where you could have a 104B number C2 that looks identical to C3, and maybe they're both for sale. So it's just to make sure that we're all on the same page, that the contract matches, that the property matches, and what have you. You can't assume that on our side, where we're checking documents and we're reviewing contracts, that we know. It's not our job to know. It's your documents are supposed to tell us what we need to know about the story so that I don't have to ideally call you with a lot of questions. Your paperwork will give me the answers. That's really the point here. So again, that's just an example of the agent one page that we are looking for. We also are going to expect the SSTAT tax record. Now, I'm not going to take the time at this moment because of our limitations today with time to show you how to get the SSTAT data. If you are a greener agent or you have never gotten SSTAT data before, and that stands for State Department of Assessment and Taxation, then please reach out. I will be more than happy to show you and give you a 15-minute tutorial on how to do it and some best practices around it. Those of you who are more experienced, this is a repeat and rinse, you already know, and so I'm going to leave it there for now and put it on you as an agent to tell me what you need individually. However, we are going to be looking for the SSTAT record. Again, why? Because it gives me who the owner is according to the state. And I'm going to compare that against the contract. So if the contract says Jenny McAtee and on SSTAT it says Mickey Mouse, I'm going to call the agent and go, wait, why does SSTAT say Mickey Mouse and on the contract you have Jenny McAtee? Okay. And of course, a lot of things happen in life. So we want some information on that. SSTAT gives me that information. All right. The other big one, and I have to tell you, and I hope if you're experienced, I would like you to just slow down and pause and join us now because this is really important and it's missing. The law changed in the state of Maryland a few years ago. And when it changed, they came out with a new form. The form is called the National Priorities List, NPL Superfund site. It's a pain because the form is called one thing and it's listed as something else in Maryland realtor forms. It's a hot mess, okay? I'm just here to tell you I can't find it sometimes. What is it for and why do I have to do it? If you are the listing agent, this falls on your shoulders to do. It is not your seller's responsibility. Good luck. We can barely do it as agents. We can't expect them to know what to do. The easiest thing, and honestly, they've changed the link several times on the EPA side. So what I do is I just go to epa.gov and then I search Superfund sites. And what you're looking for is the search for Superfund sites where you live. So again, let's take it real slow. epa.gov, Superfund sites. You're looking for search for Superfund sites where you live. Now, if you list a lot, you might want to bookmark that. I certainly would. That will bring you to this page here, the Superfund sites where you live page. If you scroll down all the way, you will come to a map. And this is the map that we as listing agents are supposed to be referencing. So again, I'm just on the search for Superfund sites where you live. I've scrolled down and there is a map. Now what I want to do is put in the listing address. Okay. Now I'm going to use the address of the office. Because we don't want to throw anybody under the bus around Superfund sites. You may recall that when you took pre-licensing, you learned that there are 5,280 feet in a mile. And you probably wondered, when am I ever going to need that? Well, guess what? Right here, right now is when you're going to need it. So if you've been selling in the city, selling more in suburbs and more urban areas, you probably haven't needed 5,280 feet too often in your world. And now all of a sudden you do, because this map only goes out 100 to 200 feet or so. But the document requires us to disclose any kind of environmental activity within a mile of the property being transferred. So therefore, we have to scroll out until, and I'm looking down here in this bottom left corner, it reaches 5,280 feet. Now, I hate that it goes from 5,000 to 2 miles. So we're just going to use our imagination and assume that we are now looking at a mile out from the office. And in doing so, currently, it does not appear as if there is, move that over there, any activity, right? So here we are in the green circle, okay, or close to the green circle. And the only thing we're seeing now is this, and you can see how aggravating this really is, right? Because you can't see it, is the ArcGIS World Geocoding Service. Now, I don't know what that is. And unfortunately, the legend is one way up here in the top of the map. This was a deleted MPL site. So at some point, I have no idea what geocoding is, but at some point, it was some kind of Superfund site. It is no longer. So therefore, I don't need the disclosure form. But what if, and if I kind of scroll out just a little more, it isn't long before we hit one. And of course, anybody who's used to the Frederick area knows that we have Fort Detrick, okay, which is a military base here in Frederick County. And Fort Detrick does have an issue, and we know it is a Superfund site because of the shape and the color, and that it is around groundwater. Now, I want to keep this in mind because now what we have to do is go to the actual NPL document, and we have to fill it out. So I think I downloaded it. Let me take a quick look. Of course, as always, when we're on these things, best laid plans. But let me see if I can find it very quickly. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do that. So let me pull up Maryland again. Get rid of some of these other things that I don't need. Go back to the statewide forms. And now the hunt begins. And I'm telling you, this is as frustrating as it gets. And I know you're like about to pull out your hair, and I do it every single time as well. When you get to the NPL document, which is hard to find, I'm not going to lie, we go through this every time. Essentially, what you're going to do when you fill it out, you are going to fill it out with the information from the EPA website. So what you're going to do is put in exactly what is here. Fort Detrick, Area B, groundwater. We do not have to disclose anything else about it. So that NPL, that National Priorities List Superfund site addendum, needs to be filled out regardless of anything. So for instance, if I were selling the office, which we're not doing, but if we were, and there is no Superfund site present, as we determined, I would still include the NPL addendum, and I would fill it out and put NA. Okay, there are none. It's not applicable, and have all parties sign it. Here's why. If that NPL Superfund site document addendum is not included, then when we are going through compliance, we have to do this activity. That's a lot of added burden when you have multiple contracts you're trying to check at any given time. So we're counting on you as a professional listing agent that you're going to go out and do your job. So we'd rather see this one and see in A, knowing that you did it. If it's missing, we have to assume you didn't do it. And then we're all going to start pulling out our hair, right? We've got to send the file back to you. You've got to go find the document. You got to go do it, or you're going to call and say, I did it. And we're going to say, well, we still need the doc, right? We're back and forth and back and forth. This will save you some aggravation and it will save us some aggravation. Now, as a personal opinion, I think this is absolutely out of scope of me as an agent to do. But this is what the state has mandated that we do. And so therefore, like it or not, we must do it. So one more time, I'm just going to very quickly go over it one more time, a little quicker. You're going to the EPA, you're searching for Superfund sites where you live, you're going down to the bottom, you're putting in the address, and you're looking for at 5,000 feet, you got to scroll out until you get to that 5,000 feet, which is as close to a mile as we're going to get on this map. You're going to look, okay, I don't see anything. I'm going to fill it out as NA. Or if you do have some, and it might be more than one, we have a lot of them in Maryland, by the way, you would add whatever you find. You could have two triangles. You might even have an orange. I would do it even if it's proposed. If it shows up on this document, on this map, I would go ahead and add it to the MPL addendum. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to help you out. Just give me a call, send me an email, and let me know what you found or what your questions are, and I'll be happy to help. That is another one of those required documents that need to also go in the MLS for disclosures. And what's interesting is how many agents aren't doing it. And I'm not talking about Iron Valley agents, by the way. I'm talking about agents in general here in the state. They're not doing it, or they're don't even know what it is. I've called and said, hey, I don't see the MPL. And I have found several listings that actually are near Superfund sites. And there's been no disclosure. That's an agent who is not aware of the current laws, okay? Which is why we do these trainings and why we do the office meetings, to keep you all in compliance. So we hope you enjoy those. Okay, there were a few others. Now, one of the things that gets kind of in the way for agents is this idea of the jurisdictional addenda. So let's have a quick conversation about the jurisdictional addenda. In the state of Maryland, the contract, which is 11 pages, is a generic property contract, essentially. That contract is really for any property within the entire state. And we do have a beautiful state here in Maryland. We have everything from the ocean to the mountains. We have a beautiful bay. We got lots of rivers, lots of waterfront. We have agriculture. We have cities. We have a little bit of everything here in the state. Am I trying to sell you on the state of Maryland? Sure I am. I would love for you to come live with me down here. However, more importantly, because that contract is so generic, it's a problem. If you've ever filled one out and or you've ever watched the third part of the training, you already know, and in fact, that one goes back to, I think, the first or second training. Needless to say, if you've ever seen it, the challenge is that half the contract doesn't apply. And then we have all these addendas that may apply. So the way I want you to think about it is that the 11-page contract of sale is generic because it covers every property in the state of Maryland. Then we got to get real specific. And we're going to start with what? The county that it's in. Now, if you're a reciprocal agent and you're coming out of PA or any other location, you may not be caring about the county. But here in Maryland, everything we do is county-based. So when you see jurisdictional addenda, that's what that means. What county are we talking about? Now, to get more confusing for you, as if it's not already confusing, every county has its own set of addenda. No two are the same. because there are special issues within each county. Let me give you a for instance. Say Howard County, for instance. Howard County is our only county in the entire state of Maryland that is surrounded by the state. You can't get out of the state. You have to go through another county. And they have a homeowners association which takes up almost 2/3 of the entire county called Columbia Association. If you've ever sold, bought, or lived there, you know what I'm talking about. It's actually studied all over the United States. It's one of the biggest homeowners associations we have in the entire country. Because of that, we have a Columbia compliance addenda. It only matters if you're buying or selling in Columbia, and it only matters if it's in Howard County, obviously. Well, we don't need that then if we're buying or selling, say, in Montgomery County. But if you are buying or selling in Montgomery County, well, guess what? They have their own rules and regulations around selling, including utility cost and making sure that you have the tax record and any important information for purchase of real estate. So what you want to do when you have that listing, you've got to figure out what county it is. And many times, especially in the center of the state, that blends. It might be Laurel. Some of you might think Laurel, Prince George's County. Oh, but wait, Laurel also crosses into Howard County and in areas it's Anne Arundel County. So where in Laurel is it? Again, if you pulled your SSTAT document, you would know because it's in the SSTAT document. Hence, that's a very big resource for you and why I told it to you in the beginning, because you're going to need that tax document. Do not rely on the seller telling you. The seller may actually be wrong. I've had many sellers say, oh, I'm in Howard County. You're like, let me check on that. Actually, Mr. Seller, you cross over and you're really in Anne Arundel County. But Howard County Fire Department comes when I have an emergency, right? Because they're the closest firehouse to you. It's one is not equal to the other. But my zip code is Howard County. No, your zip code is with the post office, and the post office zip code has nothing to do with property lines. So we have to have answers to these. We have to double and triple check our work in Maryland. It is one of the things that makes us both lovely, but also hard and confusing as an agent. Okay, so jurisdictional, you're going to look for the county that the property is in, and then you're going to look. When the checklists get updated on SkySlope, which is coming any day, I'm almost done with those and they should be uploaded and finished. You will be able to find out the county and what is needed within that county. However, if you have questions, let us know. Maryland Realtors has now included in their documentation all of the jurisdictional, and that's because so many of us were like, help us out. This is too hard to figure out. And if my license is good for the entire state, but I belong to FCAR, Frederick County Association of Realtors, and I'm selling in, I don't know, Prince George's County, how do I get the documents if I don't have access to them? So Maryland Realtors has finally heard us on that, and they have done a very good job of including them in all of their documentation now. So all of the jurisdictional are here, or at least the big ones. You're going to have to assume that it's up to date. They have gotten much, much, much better at it. But needless to say, good luck with that. Call if you need help. That's really the answer that I have there. Okay. And so that will help. Now, you have this contract of sale. The contract of sale is statewide. Now we've brought it down to the county. So now what do we need? Well, now what we need is to get real specific about the property itself. If you go back to the second and third training, when we were going over the contract of sale, specifically the one on the contract, and I might have the numbers wrong, but the training on the contract itself, you probably heard me say, if you can answer yes to any of the paragraphs in that 11 pages, we have an addendum for that. Now that's kind of a running joke that I use because it's not 100% true, but it is more true than it's not. So what do I mean? Well, let's take, for instance, solar. If I ask on a property as I'm going through that contract of sale, solar, does this property have solar? Yes, it does. Great. There's an addendum for that. And what you will find on the checklist is that we have a lot of addendum that are only if necessary, okay? Only if applicable, only if necessary. So for instance, if the answer was yes, there is solar, then you would pull the solar addendum. Now, we're not going to do that. I'd be here all day going over just all these extra addendums. You just have to say, if it's a yes, then I need a form for that. Let's give you another one. Another one in the contract of sale is, ground rent. If on the first page of the contract of sale and in the listing, it is not being sold as a full sale in the regards to there's ground rent, then you can't sell it without the ground rent. And if there's ground rent, you got to have an addendum for that, right? Because now we're talking very property specific. In Baltimore City, you can have a row house, let's call it 123 Broad Street. 123 Broad Street might be a ground rent situation. You're only buying the house, you're renting the land under the house. And yet 124 Broad Street is not ground rent, okay? So you have to, again, start looking at the property itself. And if you think of it in layers like that, if you think of contract to sale anywhere in the state, now I have jurisdictional, what county or city is it in? Where is it located? What are the special things there within that county? Anne Arundel County, water's going to become a big issue. Montgomery County, we're getting military involved down there, right? So every county is going to be different. Once you get through the county ones, then you get to get real specific about the house itself. Now, as you know, and I know, a house may be in what? A homeowners association or a condo association. So before you even get to the house level, ask yourself about the neighborhood. The jurisdictional document is only handling the county as a whole. We then have to talk about the neighborhood. You might be interested to know that in the state of Maryland, if a buyer buys into a homeowners association or a condo association, they must, by law, be a member. Well, if somebody must be a member and they're buying a property, then we must disclose information about that opportunity. You're buying into a townhouse, Mr. or Mrs. Seller or buyer. Just so you know, this isn't a townhouse, this isn't a homeowners association. On the listing side, are you, Mr. Seller, part of a homeowners association? Do you pay into a homeowners association? If the answer is yes, great. I'm going to get you some disclosure forms so that you can tell me who the property manager is and how we contact them, right? So that we can work on the resale documents for that HOA and condo association. It's all about informing the buyer about all aspects of the house, not just the interior, exterior, location, neighborhood, county, state. So again, if you think through the layers, it will help you on the listing of what else do I need to ask? What else might my seller have to disclose? What might a buyer be interested in knowing or want to know? What's material fact in this contract? And if it is a yes, whatever the question is, we probably have an addendum for that. So there are many of them, like the ground rent, deferred water, water quality, solar, HOA, condo, all of these parts that as a seller's listing agent, you must be able to disclose. You have to help the seller exchange that information to the buyer. And I don't know doesn't work. It doesn't work for you as a listing agent, and it does not work for the seller. Okay, they are still held accountable for the information being exchanged. So what I usually say is, hey, slow it down. It's okay to slow it down. If you don't know, ask some questions. There are a few other documents that I'm going to list for you, and the reason I'm going to list them for you is because I do not have them to pull up, but they're disclosure forms. So in other words, they are information only. They are going to be expected from you as a seller. You're going to have them as part of your disclosures on the MLS. One of them is the consumer notice to buyers of residential real estate. It's a one-page document. You don't have to do anything but have everybody sign. The other one is the buyer's right and seller's obligations. It's a two-page document. Again, there's nothing really to fill out. It's just a disclosure form. And you're going to have your sellers and your buyers sign. Now, some of you out there have probably taken a listing before and you're grumbling. I can hear it. You're grumbling and you're saying, wow, that consumer notice is supposed to come from the buyer, right? The buyer's agent. Okay, maybe it is. Or I get agents who go, well, it's already been done. Do I have to do another one? Nope. And I really don't care who it comes from, buying side or listing side, regardless. It's an informational document that the buyer is entitled to get and is mandated to get. And I don't care how they get it, so long as they got it. And so even though you might say, well, that's the buyer's agent side or your buyer's agent, that's the listing agent's responsibility, just do it. Just do it. If you know it's required, don't wait for a buyer's agent to fill it out. Just go ahead and have it there. Add it into your disclosures, right? Be the bigger agent on that. Now there's another document. Those are some of the ones I wanted to go real quick. You don't really need to see them. You'll see them when you pull them up. But the other one that I really want you to see and that I want to go over with you today is another one of those requireds. And I have to find it. So give me just a moment and I'll be able to pull it up for you. And what we're looking for here is the inclusions exclusions. Okay, that's again, my shorthand is inclusions exclusions. And I'm looking, it is another disclosure form, but unlike some of the others, this is also required, okay? And it is required by the seller. So let me find it. I just found the super fun one. Yay. Bad timing, but there it is. All right, let me find the inclusions exclusions. And here it is under disclosures and notices on Maryland Realtors. I will show this to you on the screen and we will go over it. This is a Maryland Realtor required document. Please don't use one that's branded. Just take it right from Maryland Realtors. We don't brand our documents here, and I love that about IVRE. We just trust the state to have done a good job on the documents. This is the disclosure. Again, it's an information sheet from seller to buyer. What Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, buyers is going to be included or not. Now, we've expanded this document recently to include leased items and look, utilities. Is this a repeat? Why, yes, it is. You probably have already given some of this information. You might recognize it as part of the D&D form. So yes, this is a repeat. Why? I don't know why. I actually don't have an answer for that, but it doesn't matter. Your seller must fill this out. Now, I will say, this is one of those documents that I find it sometimes easier if I check the boxes and then verify. So sometimes if I've done my profile sheet from Bright and I'm being generous and I have time, then I fill out all these little check boxes for my seller. And then when I give it to the seller, it's already done. And I say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, please just verify that I got it all. However, they must fill out any additional inclusions or anything that is not going to be included. So for instance, many times I'll say, though, there's a garage, and you'll say, oh, I see there's an opener. There might be one. Is there a remote? And they go, no. And you go, well, how do you get into your garage? Oh, I click the thing on my visor, the little black box on my visor. Okay, we call that a remote. We're going to add one. Is there one in the other car? Yes. All right, we're going to put a 2 there. So I won't put the number sometimes. I'll let them add in the number and then I verify that with them. Leased items has become an issue. Okay, leased items have become an issue because the law has changed a lot around leased items. Fuel tanks, solar panels, alarm systems, and water treatment systems seem to be a source of argument. They became a big argument here in the state for a while. Maybe they still are, I don't know. So if you take the time with your sellers to go over this document and be very clear about it and don't willy-nilly it, don't rush it, then this won't be as big of an issue. But the state has made it clear that specifically around fuel tanks, that any fuel left in the tank is non-negotiable. It's now the ownership of the new owner, the buyer, okay? Solar panels, hint, is it's a yes? You probably need a solar addendum, right? We already covered that. If there's solar panels, are they leased or are they fully owned? That's where the addendum will help you with that. But this is a great time to ask the question, to prepare yourself for what you're going to need in the listing. Is there an alarm system? Is it leased or owned? Are you taking it? Many of the home safety equipment that we have these days, you just unplug it out of a wall and you can take it with you. If it's hardwired, we already know it's real property, so it's intended to stay. But this is a good time to tell us, oh, I pay a monthly fee, right? It's with ADT or it's with some other organization. And same with the water treatment system. So we want to know about anything that is leased. But even if it's not leased, like solar panels, it's a good question to ask and make sure you have the answer for. That's what makes the difference between a great agent and a mediocre agent. A listing agent that asks all the questions up front, gets all the information, can make for a much smoother transaction once we have an offer on the table. And now once we're under contract, okay? That's what we're getting at here. The more we do up front, the more the buyer knows, the stronger we know our transaction can be, okay? Finally, with paragraph 3 is those utilities, okay? So water supply, sewage, heating, etc. And this should match exactly what is on that D&D form. One of the reasons I know that they included that here in 2023, and we know it's 2023 from the bottom here, is because we weren't filling out page 1 of the D&D form. So if you fill out 1, make sure it matches the other. I highly recommend that you do fill out page 1. Okay, it's a really good thing to do regardless. And then of course, anything that is put here in the inclusions paragraph or the exclusions, please reiterate that with the buyer. If your seller is leaving some furniture pieces, you got to make sure that the buyer knows that, because that could affect lending. Lender may not like personal property left at the property. And if there's a prized possession and it's not going, we need to make sure the buyer knew that. Especially nowadays where so many pieces fit just perfectly in a space, we got to make sure the buyer knows what's included or not. All right, so that is really the crux of all of the documents that you need. We've talked about those pre-contract, and I'm going to just go over the list of documents. I recently heard an agent say, oh, I made a list. So here's your list. I'm going to go over it. So if you want to write a list, you can. You can always listen to this. And then, of course, our checklist will be updated here very shortly to reflect all of these. Your pre-contract forms, what are we going to look for? Well, we're going to look for that understanding whom real estate agents represent. We're going to look for the consent for dual agency. And then we're going to look for your agency agreement. Okay, in this training, it's the listing agreement, or if you're with the buyer, your buyer agreement. We're going to look for the MLS listing agent one-page printout. That's just a PDF right from the MLS to make sure we're all on the same page of what is being sold. We're going to look for those jurisdictional addenda. What county is the document or is the property in, and what document or documents do you need to go with that? By the way, I think I failed to make mention of this, and that is not every county actually has a document. There are some counties that have no additional forms. So if you can't find one, it's possible that they don't have one. Right? Have any questions, you can always call. You're also going to include other addenda. The required ones are the tax record from the State Department of Assessment and Taxation. On the inside of the brokerage, I and anybody looking for compliance is going to look for the lockbox addendum. Will not go on the MLS as a disclosure. We're going to look for the financial condition of the property. Again, only for our eyes, not for the MLS, not for public knowledge. And of course, the listing broker's offer of cooperative compensation as it was negotiated with the seller. Again, for our eyes only until and if it is requested from the buyer's agent and the buyer. You will include the National Priorities List Superfund site addendum. That is required. We want to make sure you went out to the EPA, that you investigated it. And if there is no Superfund in sight within 5,280 feet, you're still going to include it and you're going to put NA. And then finally, that bright disclosure for the seller so that we are in compliance with MLS. All the others, consumer notice, buyer's right, may or may not be done by buyer's agent, whereas the listing agent are going to make sure it's done right up on the front side. We are going to have the seller fill out on their own either page 1 through 3 of the disclose and disclaim, or page 4. We're going to make sure they understand latent defects, and we're going to ask 15 times if there are any latent defects we need to be aware of. And if so, we must disclose those. We're also at that same time going to have the seller fill out the inclusions and exclusions and tell us about any leased items that might be on the property. And finally, any additional addenda that are special to that home in particular, that property being transferred, such as homeowners associations, condo associations, if there are solar panels, if there's water quality, if there's a water yield test, which is county dependent, okay, any of the like. Okay. Don't forget, if there is a tenant involved, you must get them to sign the lockbox addendum so that they know that there is a key out there and they might be visited for openings, open houses, etc., etc. With that, I wish you the best of luck. I only laugh because I do think it's kind of funny. More importantly, you're going to have questions. Even the most experienced of us do. We have to double and triple check our work. Do not hesitate. I would rather my phone ring with a question than you miss something and now we have an issue right before settlement, or a buyer wasn't given the proper information that they deserved. Feel free to reach out with any questions. You can always find me at on email, jenny@McAteeGroup.com. You can always call me directly, 240-595 2680, or you can call us at 240-397-9292 here in the office in Frederick. Please reach out with any questions, problems, or concerns that you have. Thank you for watching the training, and we will see you in July.